Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Simply Sketchy. Today, I brought with me a rather new friend of the channel, uh, Wandering Helmsman.
Hello.
And today, we're going to talk about Arcane. Wandering, please introduce yourself.
Hello. As you said, I am Wandering Helmsman. I am a VTuber who's pretty new to the streaming scene. I've been streaming for I think since February. And I do gaming and news. And I've been wanting to branch out into media analysis. And Trim reached out, and that was the perfect opportunity. I felt like this is my toe dipping into those waters, as it were.
Happen to be the gateway for that one, dude. So,
Thank you.
I've watched Arcane twice, but it started to be a hot minute since last time I watched it. So, if I remember correctly, you pretty much has done a lot of homework for today. So, I'm gonna give full control to you when it comes to like pacing here.
I have. When you approached me and you told me the concept, it was pretty quick. It was a pretty easy decision for me to want to talk about this show. So I watched it 2 days ago, as of this time of this recording. So it's really fresh in my head, and that's probably like the I would say 10th, 11th time that I've seen the show all the way through. And it was this last showing where I definitively decided that it was my favorite show of all time. Um, so I have many things to talk about, and honestly, I could talk forever about this show. But in thinking and doing research and kind of gathering thoughts about how to talk about this show, I have basically decided to approach it through I wouldn't say themes. I think themes are a bit too high level to want to talk about, and I don't think they're incredibly useful, but more aspects of humanity that the show clearly goes out of its way to explore across the narrative. And so today, at least for this discussion, there are four characters that I want to focus on. And those four characters are going to be Vander and Silco, as well as Vi and Savika.
Yeah, they're
And why these four characters? Because typically I don't think people have chosen to look at these characters on their own as a group. And the reason is because I want to use these characters to explore loyalty, as well as fatherhood, and how humanity is driven by family in this show. So that's kind of the idea.
yeah.
Now, how familiar are you, Trim, with the world that this show takes place in?
Let's see, the world itself, I not more than what is shown in Arcane because I've never played League of Legends. I didn't
Oh, so
have
you don't even know what the world is called?
No, I have essentially just I try to get into it, but the gameplay is antithetical to what I'm able to do. I just hate the point and clickers. I never got into Diablo because of that.
Oh yeah. No, I'm honestly completely with you. I have never played the game either. I knew nothing about Riot Games and any of their products until this show came out, and I watched the show, and I was blown away by the show, and it got me looking into the world. And I actually there's a card game called Legends of Runeterra. Runeterra is the name of the whole world of League of Legends, by the way.
Oh,
And there's a card game that they have called Legends of Runeterra. And it's a fantastic card game. Absolutely fantastic card game. If you're into like deck builder, single player, kind of just, you know, almost like roguelite card games, there's nothing better than Legends of Runeterra. Highly, highly recommend. I probably put 2,000 plus hours into that game. I absolutely love it. And I discovered it because of this show.
nice.
And what's interesting is that after the big Riot layoffs and restructuring that happened right at the beginning of the year, they basically declared that Legends of Runeterra was going to be focused on single player, and that there are two sources of canon for the world of Runeterra going forward. One was that card game, and the other is this show, Arcane.
Nice.
So everything that happens in Arcane is canon, or if it contradicts anything from League of Legends, it is new canon as far as they're concerned. So they're using the card game and this show to basically build a unified, fully coherent world of Runeterra going forward, which is interesting. But so Runeterra is it is defined primarily by two big continents. There's a northern continent and a southern continent, and they're separated by an ocean. In the north, you have like Noxus and Demacia, which is a whole thing on their own. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the next animation project they'd go into. And the southern continent is defined by I think it's called Shurima, as well as the mountain of Targon and a few other places. And on the east side of these continents, the land masses of these two continents converge towards each other. And at one of the easternmost points that converges to the point where the only thing separating these two continents is a big river. And across this big river are the sister cities of Piltover and Zaun, which is where this show takes place. And then to the east of these continents, you have a series of islands. You have like the magical island of Ilonia, I think it's Ilonia. You have like the Bilgewater, which is like pirate land. And then to the southeast, you have the Shadowed Isles, which is like this like magical underworld, almost Hades-like realm. Now, so the setting of the show is that Piltover is basically founded as this city built purely for the sake of scientific progress, essentially, and that's because of the mages and the arcane basically getting out of control and leveling like a whole city state.
Right.
And as a result of, and you see this hinted at in the show as well, in Heimerdinger's memories, he has these flashback moments where he has these images of this wizard in the air floating above this entire like region that's been completely obliterated by the arcane.
Yeah, Heimerdinger's as someone who strikes me as incredibly afraid of magic, or as he says himself, he's seen what happens when arcane energy just goes wild, essentially.
Exactly, and he's actually one of the founders of the city.
Yeah.
So he basically is one of few survivors of this event, and he and a group of scientists they retreat south, and they found the city of Piltover, the city of progress, where they rely entirely on technology and things like that. And you actually brought up a really good thing that I like about the show, where Heimerdinger is like terrified of the arcane. I really appreciate the fact that magic and the very presence of magic is taken very, very seriously in this show. It's not this flippant thing that just exists in the world. It actually has like major implications in the world, which I really appreciate about the show and its setting.
Yeah, it's also treated like what I like about the magic in this show, or rather the arcane, is that it is shown as something with nearly, if not completely, unlimited potential, but you gotta treat it with care and respect, or else it will become something that could just literally burn you to, well, ash.
Mm-hmm.
If you're lucky.
And it's also interesting because the small glimpse that we get of actual arcane magic in the show, which is the flashback where Jace and his mom are saved from being frostbitten to death by the mage, is magic requires resources. Because remember, he has that little stone.
Yeah.
And then after the stone is used to teleport them to safety, it goes dim, and he just dumps the useless gem back into Jace's hand and leaves.
Yeah,
right?
it is not something you just pull out of your rear, but it's an actual resource of something, and mages are people who know how to use it. And this is something I really like in some fantasies, which I wish could see more of. Magitech.
Yes.
And it is so well made in the series.
Yeah, the show, like, it's very much defined by two different technologies that you see diverging between Piltover and Zon. And Piltover, very much after the invention of Hextech, becomes very much like a Magipunk, Magitech world. Whereas on the other side, with the introduction of Shimmer and its, the mutagenic properties of Shimmer, the ability to bend nature, right? You get Chempunk,
Yeah, or
Chemtech,
or alchemy, essentially. That is what he.
yes.
That is what the scientist who works for Silk, at least, seems like. He seems like one of those.
Yes, Singed.
Yeah, Zinj is.
Who is never named in the show, interestingly.
Huh?
Yeah, he's never named in the show.
Oh.
Yeah, people know who he is, people who know the game, but people who know nothing about the game wouldn't have known anything about that because he's never named. Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So like as these societies, because the whole idea of these sister cities is that Zon is the city across the river.
Yes.
And Zon is like this city that gets left behind as Piltover progresses.
Yeah, and it also seems to be very subservient to Piltover. As Piltover it has all the power, but Zon is just, oh, you're lesser than us, so we can do whatever we want with you.
Mm-hmm. And Vi expresses that exact sentiment when she's talking to Vander on the bridge in the first act. But there's this interesting relationship between these two cities, and yes, Zon is very much subservient. Like, they are still under the rule of the Piltover Council, even though they have their own little Chem Baron Council. They're still subservient to the Council of Piltover.
Yeah, because again, they are more like a industrial, or rather, what's the word I'm looking for? Less. They're more criminals than, at least that's how they're shown for me. They look more like criminals than actual political leaders.
Right. Yeah. They basically are like drug barons.
Yeah.
That's what they are. They're not really leaders per se. They're leaders in as much as, like, you could equate them to the real world as like cartel bosses.
Yeah.
Is what they are. And cartel bosses are still under the rule of legitimate political leaders, governments, and stuff like that, which is exactly what you have. Now, I guess now that we have the setup of the setting of the show and the way that magic exists in this world, and how it's very much a taboo thing that you don't screw with magic in this show.
No.
Or at least in this part of the world. There are other parts of the world where magic is very normal. Like Demacia is like the city of mages. And like the island of Ionia is very much a high magic setting. Very, very, very different part of the world. And it's very curious how they're gonna end up unifying the whole world. I think it's gonna be, if they pull it off, it'll be probably one of the greatest fantasy worlds ever created, as far as I'm concerned. But in this world, this is a very low magic setting. And there's also this, we've established the relationship between Piltover and Zon. And just thinking about that relationship, naturally, you're going to have some people in Zon who desire revolution.
Yeah.
And what's interesting in the show is that the goal of the revolution isn't to take over Piltover; it's to become free of it.
Yeah, essentially
they
what Silco
and
Sabika represents, right?
Correct. They don't desire dominance; they desire independence,
yes.
which is important. They don't war over Piltover as a means of domination. They're not a war. It's not a warring city, essentially. And I think that the relationship is actually in the very first scene of the show is a very young Vi and an even younger Jinx on the bridge, basically right at the tail end of a failed revolution led by Vander. And there is so much characterization that happens in this one scene alone, and there isn't a word spoken in the entire scene, which is a brilliant opening scene for a show.
Yeah, it is. The atmosphere is thick in that one.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've seen, like there's more, like that. The first scene of Arcane episode 1 does a better job of pulling you into the world than I've seen like entire seasons or shows do. Like they did it in one scene.
Yep.
And I think that when the show opens, Jinx as a little girl, she is singing this. It's like a folk tune that they sing in the lanes. The lanes is like the what the people who live in Zaun, because Zaun doesn't technically exist yet, right?
Nope.
It's so they call it the lanes. Or the Undercity. That's what Piltovians. I don't know.
We could call them
Piltovarians.
Piltovians.
Piltovians. Piltovarians sounds weird.
That might be something completely different.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. We'll call them Piltovians. We'll say that.
Pilters.
But they call them, the Undercity, and the people who live in the Undercity call them. They call it the lanes. And they sing this song, and Jinx is singing this song as she's being led out with her eyes covering, or her hands covering her eyes, and Vi is holding her hand, guiding her.
Yeah.
And Jinx sings this tune, and the tune very much encapsulates how Zaunites view themselves in relation to the Piltovians. And if you would entertain me, I would like to sing this tune.
Go ahead.
All right. Here we go. It's not long.
Karaoke like on the art check. Let's go.
That's right. Karaoke. Here we go.
I mean, you are a VTuber, so it's bound to happen.
It's bound to happen. Eventually, I'm going to get around to doing it on my own channel. Anyway, but here is the folk tune.
Dear friends, across the river, my hands are cold and bare. Dear friend, across the river, I'll take what you can spare. I ask of you a penny, my fortune it will be. I ask you without envy, we raise no mighty towers. Our homes are built of stone. So come across the river and find the world below.
The end.
Yeah. It's kind of a well-made song to just put how the future Sonites view the Piltovians.
They do see themselves as lesser.
Yeah.
And they say, like, I'll take what you can spare. I ask of you a penny, my fortune it will be. I ask you without envy. We raise no mighty towers. Our homes are built of stone.
Yep.
They're very aware that they are lesser than the Piltovians.
Yeah. And that is a thing that never really changes, even as we get to the later parts, because it is, there is gonna be, for future notice, there is gonna be some spoilers to this series, as this will be a general walkthrough through some themes. So I'm pretty sure Helmsman will recommend strongly to watch the show. It is essentially one of the only reasons to get a Netflix subscription.
It really is one of the only reasons to have a Netflix subscription is to have this show.
Yeah.
I know your audience, Trim, because
Yes.
Your audience is similar to my audience. You're gonna see a lot of the majority of the main characters are women, some of which you have danger haircuts.
Yes.
With side-shaped haircuts and blue and pink hair and all this other kind of stuff. And I know that those are all typically red flags.
Yes,
But
there's a lot
trust
of
me,
warning klaxons.
there really is. But trust me from the bottom of my heart, this show is the exact opposite of everything those red flags represent.
I was
Um,
surprised because I was expecting this to be exactly as it looked to be, but I've
mhm.
never been this surprised, really. This is one of those that, yeah, it's not one of those that doesn't show anything. It does show a lot of the quote unquote dangerous material, but it doesn't play out any of the ways you could expect.
No, if anything, it's fully subversive to all of those lazy modern Hollywood tropes.
Yes. The right
It
kind of
fully flies in the
subversive.
face of all that.
Yeah.
And I will say though that to the show's credit, these characters were created with blue and pink hair and stuff like that way back when League of Legends, because the characters in this show are all pretty original characters. Like Jinx was introduced only a couple years or so after the original game came out. They're all pretty old school characters in the game, and in a game that's top-down, clicky, competitive, hero, node control kind of combat,
Yep.
you have to be able to identify characters immediately on your screen.
Yeah.
So the best way to do that is to give them different colored, brightly colored haircuts.
Yeah, and of course,
Um,
on the point of Jinx, in the game, she's essentially a wannabe modern Harlequin. In this show, it's far more deeper than that.
no, yeah, that's something that yeah, we can get into that really quick, even though Jinx isn't the focus of this talk, but
Sorry.
we can kind of use this as a tangent. No, it's fine, it's fine. Jinx has become everything that Harley Quinn used to be. Harley Quinn was introduced on Batman the Animated Series, and she was one of the best original female characters ever. She had this really tragic downfall,
Yeah.
and she was like this victim, but also maintained her agency. So she still made the choices that she made, and she has to be responsible for those choices and face the consequences of those choices. But she's also a victim
Yeah, I'm just
of
saying
a horrendous manipulator and abuser.
the canon ending to Harlequin saga, no matter where and when, will always be the one from Batman Beyond the movie.
Which is
After the Joker passes in the olden days, Harley Quinn just turns up normal. It straightens out, not not in the newer form of words, but it turns to the straight and narrow, becomes it's revealed later, she's actually a grandma now. Started a family, essentially.
I think that's a good canon. That way,
Yeah.
that because what that means is that the Joker is purely the source of her corruption. So once you remove the Joker, all the corruption lifts.
Which is the entire point of it, because yes, Joker is the source of it, and remove him, and Harley Quinn becomes normal. Because it's shown in the
Right.
episodes that focus. I know we're on to something else, but it shows in the series itself. Whenever the Joker is around and it's just Batman and Harley, there is more to her than just being the chuckling retard.
Yeah, and that's what I hate about what she has become, because Harley Quinn has been reduced to a chuckling, manic retard.
Yes.
And I hate it. I hate how they refuse to take her seriously anymore. And she's essentially like a combination of just like the Joker and Deadpool.
Ugh.
And it's just such a shame that they just refuse to take her seriously anymore. And I hate what she's become. And that's just a good segue back to Arcane. When Jinx was introduced into the game, that's what she was. She was just this crazy, murderous retard who broke the fourth wall, just like Harley Quinn was at the time of Jinx's creation. And now with Arcane, she's been reborn as this really deep, tragic character that anyone who has any kind of a fatherly instinct like myself just wants to just give her a hug and say it'll be okay.
Yeah.
They really make you sad for this girl.
Yeah.
And
But
they
it's
really
not
did
just
a
that she's a
fantastic
victim either, though, because while she is a victim of many of circumstance in many ways, she does take hold of her own destiny and chooses things.
Be Jinx. Yes.
Yes, and let's put it like this: she is, I want to say, while she's I guess, protagonist villain, because in the end, she isn't a good person. She's a broken person that that starts, at least to me, starts doing some evil deeds. She doesn't really care about anyone but her and her
Well,
own.
Jinx is on a Darth Vader arc.
Yep.
She is a hero who falls and then is redeemed through family.
Yeah.
At least that's the arc that she's on. We'll see where she goes in season 2. I've seen the poster for season 2, and it's like a mirrored, like a disturbing mirror of the poster for season 1.
Yes.
Like in season 1, her poster, the poster is of Vi, a young Vi, embracing Jinx in a loving caretaker, protector kind of way. You know,
Yep.
Vi's head is facing away from the viewer, and Jinx has this innocent gaze into the viewer's eye. Whereas the season 2 poster has Jinx embracing Vi, but Vi has this look of trauma on her face.
Yeah, she
And
is
Jinx,
scared.
Jinx is looking very menacingly at the viewer.
Yeah.
And
Sort of.
it's very much it's very much more aggressive.
Yeah,
And
it is essentially a more twisted. It is the same but
Mhm.
twisted, essentially. Just like
It's
like Jinx herself, the same but very twisted.
I feel like where the first one is protective, the second one is a little bit more possessive.
Yes.
Like Jinx is like, this is mine, and I will burn the world down to keep you from taking her from me.
Yes.
So I can speculate forever as to where these characters are going to go into season 2, but that's not the point of this discussion. Let me get back to the bridge.
Let's go.
So they sing this. She's singing this song, and the whole point of this first scene is actually about Vander. Vander makes a very important choice in this opening scene.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, he is currently showing what the insides of a dude's head looks like through blunt force trauma.
Yes, he's got his what are the metal kind of gloves called, like cestas or setas?
Yeah, I think it's Cestus.
Cestas. I think that's what they're called.
Yes.
Maybe your comments can correct that.
Essentially, imagine boxing gloves but made out of solid steel to
They're
not
like
be
makeshift
soft.
gauntlets.
Yes.
So yeah, he's basically like Vi and Jinx. They walk up this bridge, and they see the carnage on this bridge, and the scene actually shows up with an enforcer just shooting dead people, right?
Yeah.
And the enforcer has this menacing, almost like Darth Vader like breathing, and he's wearing a mask so you can't see his eyes, so he doesn't seem human, you know. But the whole point of this scene is a choice that Vander makes. Vander is busy beating up enforcers to a pulp. He's one of the last surviving people in this attempted revolution, is what this is.
Yes.
On this bridge. And then he sees the two girls. The two girls have this, they look at him, and then he kind of looks down and he nods over, and the two girls see their dead parents.
Yeah.
Who participated in the revolution. And then Vander looks at them, they start crying. Vi breaks down, and Jinx embraces Vi. And then Vander, he basically looks to the enforcers across the bridge. And then he looks to the girls. And then he makes this choice, this very important character choice, to, instead of going forward and fighting, he retreats and he takes the girls with him.
Yeah.
And this is a very revealing choice that he makes. About this choice of his very much reveals his true character, um, and that is that of a protector and not a fighter.
Yeah.
And that's a key distinction that gets made in this scene. And that establishes, because they leave and Vi sees the enforcers as Vander's taking them away, and she gets this scowl of hatred on her eyes, and then that's like the end of the opening scene.
Yeah.
Very, very, a very, very, very solid way to open a show. Not too many can top it, honestly, especially since there's not a single word spoken in the whole scene, and yet so much is given to us in that one scene.
Yeah.
And then we skip forward. We skip forward a few years. I think it's only like 2 or 3 year time jump. I can't remember exactly how long. It's not that long.
2, 3, maximum 4, I think.
Yeah, let's go with 3. I think it's about 3, judging by like how much the kids have grown.
Yep.
And they're doing a heist. And I'm not going to get into the details of the heist, but the heist goes wrong. And the way that heist goes wrong is they end up in a fight. So it's Vi and Jinx. It's Jinx's first job. It's Vi and Jinx, and then the two other sons who were orphaned in the revolution that Vander also took under his wing, Clagger and Milo.
Yes.
And they're doing this heist, and they screw up, and they end up in a chase, and they end up getting into a fight with this other kind of group of, this other little kid teenager gang, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, essentially it's shown to be a very recurring rival of Vi. It's someone she has a history with.
Yeah, you could tell that she knows who he is. He doesn't really. I wouldn't say he has much of a rivalry with Vi per se.
Well, you can't be rival with someone who can kick your ass easily, but at least he thinks he's better than her, but he's wrong. Very, very wrong.
He thinks he is, but what I love about this fight is it immediately dispels the idea of Vi being a girl boss. Because the fight commences, but then it really there's a part where it slows down into slow motion, and the whole fight plays out in slow motion, and the trigger, the event that triggers the slow motion is Vi taking a huge left hook right to her face.
Yes.
Like, she gets pummeled.
Yeah, because that's rule number 1 about girl bosses. They never take damage. Vi, she takes a few punches.
She gets her ass kicked. Yeah, she wins, but she gets her ass kicked in the process.
Yeah, which is what I like to call she earned the win.
She earns the win, exactly. And I really do like this is actually a good opportunity to talk about choreography, like fight choreography in the show. Mm-hmm. It does a really good job of, number 1, Vi is clearly a boxer and a brawler. And the way that they animate her she keeps her fists right up on her jaw, like a good boxer does. Her elbows are tucked in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She keeps, her chin is tucked. Like, she has like this really good tight boxing position, and she actually does good solid boxing. Like, and you could tell that she's practiced this, and it shows her practicing boxing later on in the show, with this really cool game, like this pad punching game that I really want one of those for myself.
It looks really cool, yeah.
But what's interesting about this fight is that there's like 2 fights that happen. There's 2 big fights that happen in the first act of the show, and this is one of them. And this one is very much like an open arena fight. And in this open arena fight, fighting in an open arena against multiple opponents, you're gonna get your ass handed to you. Now, luckily, Vi has her own allies, and Clagger was really the star of this fight. Like, he's the one that really walloped the other gang.
Yeah, he takes a lot of punches, but he dishes out as hard as he gets.
Yeah, exactly. Vi does too. Milo gets a couple of slugs in, but that's not his strong suit, so he mostly gets his ass kicked.
Yeah.
But when you're surrounded by multiple opponents, it doesn't matter how well trained you are, you're going to get your ass kicked. And that's exactly what happens, which I really appreciate. Like Vi, she gets tackled, she gets walloped by big haymakers and stuff. She gets blindsided in the fight. They use their environment. Like at one point, Clagger throws sand after he falls down into the guy's eyes to get an advantage over him. It's very well thought out and realistic.
Yeah.
As to how the fight plays out. So that by the time Vi is fighting Savika with giant, magic gloves, techno magic gloves and, red magic, almost lightsaber-like sword.
Yeah.
You believe Vi's power level.
Yeah.
It's very believable. Like, you see, if you see her fight without the first act of the show, you'd be like, you're like, there's no way I'm gonna believe that this girl is this strong. This is bullshit. This is girl boss. I'm out.
Yeah.
But then if you watch the first act, you're like, oh yeah, I believe it completely. Like,
Yeah, they built
it's
it up.
absolutely
They
believable.
prepared it. They
Yes.
set the scene long before the scene happened.
And even like, max power Vi still gets her ass kicked in the fights.
Oh yeah.
Because
there's never going to be a fight where you don't get hit.
Right, exactly. There's no the Jet Li choreography. I always hated Jet Li choreography because he would just never get hit. But anyway, the choreography in the show is really well thought out and well animated. You feel the gravity behind punches and falls and tackles, all that kind of stuff. You really feel it in the show. Even the weight of weapons, you can feel. But in this fight, Jinx loses the stuff because Vi has the bag of stuff that they stole. The first thing she does is she throws it to Jinx to get Jinx out of the fight because her natural instinct is to protect Jinx.
Yes.
But then one of the bad guy gang members chases Jinx, and the only way Jinx is able to escape because one of her little monkey bomb fails is to throw the stuff into the river and then run away. So they lose the stuff. They end up in the underworld, which again has this really, really good establishing scene to a really cool soundtrack called "Welcome to the Playground." And you really get this feel of how grimy and thick the air is, and how dirty and just how seedy this world is that they live in the Undercity.
Yeah.
And they end up back at the last drop, which is Vander's bar. And this is where Vander has an interesting talk with her, or with Vi, because Vi basically has this. She isn't being responsible with how the other kids look up to her.
Yeah.
No. And so there's this fatherly moment where Vander basically orders all the other kids out and says, hey, you say jump, they say how far. You're responsible for these kids and you have to be more careful with them.
He basically checks her to make her consider what she has, instead of being like, oh, you can do anything. You're literally the best thing since sliced cheese. But here instead, she gets a little bit of a reality check because she has a lot of power over these kids.
Exactly, and one of the things that I really appreciate this, so we kind of start getting into the fatherhood exploration aspect of the show here, is that Vi, there's a lot of female characters in this show that have kind of masculine traits and roles, but they're still treated as women. They're written as women. They're not written as men and then cast with women, which is something that annoys the hell out of me. People think that you can just cast women in a man's role or vice versa and it doesn't matter, and it's no, it absolutely matters. Mm-hmm. Because the way that Vander treats Vi is not the way that he would treat her if she was his son. Because you notice when he's quote disciplining her, he doesn't raise his fist to her, he doesn't raise his voice. He sits down with her and he basically engages in like a balance of validation and discipline,
Yes.
which is not the way he would treat her if she was his son. She was if he had a son in that role, he would get way madder at her. He would raise his voice. He may even raise his fist. You know, because fathers treat sons differently than daughters, and I appreciate the fact that the show understands that like there's a difference between men and women and how they behave and how they have relationships with each other. So, I want to get into is that there's this fatherly moment. We've established that the writers actually give a damn about writing women differently than men.
Yeah.
Another thing that that writers who actually care and who aren't lazy, but will bother to do when exploring an idea or a topic, or an aspect of humanity. And it's also the other like the last like important scene in this episode is between Vi and Powder, and this scene actually interestingly establishes two relationships between Vi and Powder, because while Vi and Powder are siblings, this conversation acts also as a show that Vi is also a kind of a parent to Powder.
Yeah, and just for our viewers, Powder is the actual name of Jinx.
Correct. And it's actually interesting because I didn't realize it until this very last time I viewed it a couple days ago, that there's actually no scene in which Vander and Powder speak one-to-one. There's one scene where they're together, just the two of them. And that scene is a short part of a montage at the end of episode 2, and they never say a word to each other. So it's almost like Vander like realizes that Powder is completely attached to Vi and no one else, and the only way for him to get through to her is through Vi.
Yeah.
Almost. So he almost relies on Vi to be a parent to Powder. I could speculate on that more. It's just an interesting thing that I noticed, how Vander doesn't actually seem to really have much of a parenting relationship with Powder, even though he is like an adoptive father figure.
Yeah.
But
His
Vi,
paternal role is more through her sister than anything else.
right. And I think it's probably because he sees like he and Vi are very similar in their nature. They're both, because remember when I said how that very first scene establishes Vander not as a fighter but as a protector. If you wanted to force that into like a Carl Jung personality archetype, both he and Vi fit into the caregiver archetype.
Yeah.
And
They're
I think
essentially
that he kind of
bears protecting their cubs, essentially.
Exactly. And I think my speculation is that he notices early on upon adopting all these kids that Vi is the one that's most like him. So he focuses on her the most so that he can basically instill his values into her so that she can be like the main parental figure to the other kids.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because it doesn't have that much connection with the boys either. So basically, he has to raise them through her, and he's essentially fortunate with her being so connected to them, and that she has such a response to him again.
Right, and you see this parallel of fatherhood between both Vander and Silco.
Yeah.
Both of these father figures, they do the same thing. They both validate their daughters, but at the same time, they try their best to imprint their values onto them.
Oh yeah.
But the thing is that Vander and Silco have a nearly dichotomous value system, and it's that influence that causes Vi and Powder, who becomes Jinx, to to estrange from each other so much is because of the influence of their respective father figures.
It's also this is what I at least saw, that you know that during, I think it's the second or the last episode, second to last, Silco has this essentially conversation with Vander at the end there, right?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get to that.
Yeah.
I
I
have a
kind of
whole
like
thing
that.
about this.
Yeah. I like that one because it kind of it shows that Silco isn't just he isn't a one-dimensional blind guy. Let's put it like this. He sees a lot of things.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I actually think that the Vander statue scene near the end of episode 9, the final episode, is probably one of the best scenes in the whole show.
Oh yeah.
Because it's a very because that scene is essentially the end of Silco's arc.
Yes.
But yeah, I will get to that. But yeah, you are correct. You're on the right track here. We also get a revelation about Vi through Vander as well. And again, there are I think there's two key aspects, maybe two or three key aspects that basically defy and subvert the girl boss, the insufferable girl boss trope that you see all throughout Hollywood.
Yep.
One we already talked about, which is that, yeah, she's strong, but she still gets her ass kicked. But another is the fact that she actually has respect for her father. Like, there's a scene, I think in episode 2, because the whole episode 2 is the only episode that doesn't have like a big action scene. The whole thing about episode 2 is this buildup of tension between Piltover arresting the one who stole a bunch of stuff and blew up half a building.
Yes.
In Piltover, right? They need their pound of flesh, as Vander puts it.
Yeah.
And the Undercity is very much doesn't want to have it. They don't want to acquiesce to Piltover. You know, they're sick of getting pushed around by Piltover because there's this boiling sentiment of revolution in the city. And like, they just had a failed revolution, but there's a whole bunch of holdovers from that failure that want to keep trying to revolt.
Yes.
Vander isn't one of them. There's a really important scene that kind of defines Savika's character, where she confronts him in the bar and says, like, why aren't you fighting? We're sick of Piltover being under Piltover's boot and all this other kind of stuff. And Vander's like, do you really want to fight this? Do I look afraid to you? And then Savika says something very important. She says, no, you look weak.
Yes.
And then she takes her goons and she basically walks out of the bar because she feels betrayed by Vander, which is true. She's correct in that. Vander decided to abandon the cause when he picked up Vi and Jinx and walked away from the conflict on the bridge. That was his choice. He chose to betray the cause and choose protecting family over the cause. And Savika ain't having none of that, because Savika is like the mirror of Vi, right?
Yep.
Savika represents like the unyielding resolve towards an ideological cause. She is like the quintessential zealot for the free nation of Zaun. Right?
I think she pretty much can be described as the archetype or the archon of loyalty to the cause.
Yes,
and
but
all that.
Yeah, it's loyal. But that's the thing: is what is she loyal to? She's not loyal to people. She's loyal to an ideological goal or a political goal.
Yes.
Basically, and she doesn't really care about the humanity that's tied up into that. She's very much an ends justifies the means kind of person, right? And you see this throughout, like every decision and action that Savika makes is essentially in the name of maintaining the cause, because the show starts with the cause basically building up pressure. And that's what she wants. So every decision that she makes throughout the show is in basically maintaining that pressure. That's what Savika is, and that's why. Because I remember, like, initially there was a lot of people that were confused on, like, why is Vi's primary antagonist and rivalry in this show a completely original character who is just a henchwoman to Silco?
Yeah.
It seems odd that that would be her rival. But if you pay attention to what they represent, they're perfect rivals. Because Vi basically represents loyalty to people. And this is the third thing that makes her not a girl boss, is that everything that she does, her strength is channeled towards helping and saving other people and not herself.
Yes.
She is entirely selfless to the point where she actually is willing to give herself up to the Piltover enforcers before Vander does. That's how selfless Vi is.
Yes.
She
has a lot. She has a sense of honor as well as take a lot of accountability. She's a very heroic character.
Yeah, she is both because the hero is another one of Jung's personality archetypes, and she is very much a combination of the hero and the caregiver. She is both.
Yes.
Which makes her a very sympathetic character in the show. And I think a lot of people, like, I remember when the show first came out, people were like, who's your favorite character? And nobody was picking Vi. But I think that more and more people are realizing that Vi is probably like one of the best characters in the show, because they're realizing of what she represents in the show.
Yeah.
Because I think when you watch it the first time, she's just this punch everything and then ask questions later. There doesn't seem to be a ton of depth to her. So she's kind of easy to write off, especially when you like juxtapose her up against the character arc of like Jinx. Yes. Or Victor, right? So they're like, Vi doesn't really change. She doesn't really go anywhere. But if you pay attention more on multiple viewings, you realize that Vi is actually like a really deep, sympathetic character that you really end up rooting for. And there's a lot of aspects to Vi's arc that indicate her. Basically, everything that she does is in the service of other people. Like I said, she gives herself up to the enforcers before Vander does. She's ready to sacrifice herself for her family. She goes out onto the bridge in episode 3 during the rescue. What does she do? She goes out onto the bridge to protect her family while they're trying to get Vander out, essentially. Yeah. Right? Milo's doing his little lockpicking, and Clagger's trying to beat up the wall in the back to create a hole. And she, much smaller, she grabs some cestas, and she goes up against these big burly guys, and she's willing. She doesn't even think about it. She just does it because she's like, this is what's necessary to protect the people that I love.
And she even gets some encouragement from Vander too. Though there are some people who I've talked to who have watched it, and this scene is a little bit where they're starting to say, "Oh, this is where it shows. This is where the red flags are being quote unquote justified."
Oh, because of the bridge scene and her ability to like beat back these goons.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't agree with that at all.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't agree with that at all. And the reason is because she's on a narrow bridge. That's the reason why. And the show clearly shows how she's not used to fighting with these big metal gloves on, and so they kind of throw her around a bit, but she's still able to maintain her form for the most part. She gets exhausted throughout it. She takes several punches, and because she's on a narrow bridge, she's forced to fight opponents one, maybe two at a time.
Yeah.
Essentially.
They're being funneled to her, and also I also have a bit of a suspicion that even though they are there to take them out, I still believe that a lot of the guys come in there because it's just a kid. You, regardless, will underestimate someone who is, or even a teenager. When someone is that young, you just naturally underestimate them.
Not only is that an underestimation of the opponent, but there's also the fact that Vi is literally fighting for everything that matters to her, whereas the goons are fighting just because their boss told them to.
Yep.
They don't have skin in the game, but Vi has all the skin in the game. So she would have the resolve, to take punches and take the hits and keep going.
Yep.
Whereas the goons don't have that resolve. So I saw that too, and I don't agree with it at all. And honestly, if you give a pair of metal gloves, because I think she's like 15 or so.
Yeah, she
like,
is starting to get late in her teens.
you get a 15-year-old some metal gloves, and a 15-year-old who's been training in boxing for years because of her dad. You give that 15-year-old girl who's been training some metal gloves, she can absolutely knock a fucking adult out.
Yeah, it's not
sorry,
just
I swore. I swore. Sorry.
No, it's just the beginning. We can start swearing now. So we're past the
okay.
YouTube threshold. But the point is, it's not just that she's been training with her father. It's also that she has been essentially going around and surviving.
Yes.
Again,
She's a scrapper. She's been scrapping her whole life.
3 episodes have spent a lot of time just showing what she's been through.
Yeah, you also notice that, her face is dirty. She's got cuts on it and stuff like that. Her knuckles are bleeding for like the whole first act.
Yep.
It's like this girl has been through some shit.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It makes sense, and again, if you give a 15-year-old some metal gloves and that girl has been trained,
yep,
that girl could do a lot of damage too. I don't care how big of an adult you are. You take a metal punch, like from a trained person, even if they're not nearly as big as you, you're gonna feel that.
Yeah, and another thing too is that she is one of the main characters, and she is not the average girl, because the average girl wouldn't stand a chance. However, she's not average. None of these
she's
characters,
not average.
None of these characters are average.
She does have some natural gift towards this, but again, you can tell that Vander's been honing that gift for years and years and years. And to somebody who could actually be that protector, caregiver role that he is, essentially, because he's basically trying to turn her into him, which is a very common thing that dads do. And not only that, but at a point, a knife gets taken out, and the moment the knife gets taken out, she hyper focuses on the weapon, because that's what happens in real fights. The moment a weapon gets involved, everybody focuses on the weapon. Hell, even the person using the weapon forgets that they have other limbs that they can use as weapons.
Yep.
And as a result of that, she fends off the knife, but then she takes a couple of huge hits, from a blind side, because she's so hyper focused on the knife, which completely makes sense. Again, it's still very well choreographed and realistic to it. And by the end of it, she's literally on her hands and knees, gasping for air. The last punch that she throws before the mutant dude comes out, she's on her hands and knees, and she just kind of lifts her arm and just kind of lunges, just at the guy's midsection. He just kind of liver shots him, and he kind of that's it. And she's done at that point.
Yeah.
She gets super exhausted throughout this fight. Also, very realistic.
Yes.
So I don't agree at all that this is a big girl boss moment for her. I think it's very well thought out. She takes her punches. She behaves like a human in that they get exhausted. They can't they can only focus on one thing at a time. These kinds of things. And then when the big mutant guy comes up, she tries. You think she's gonna land this massive big, jumping punch from the railing. and the dude just snatches her by the throat right out of the air, and she's just like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah.
It's like she's done. She's helpless, and then she crawls back in and barely gets the door shut before the mutant guy can get into the room.
Yeah.
So it's a really well thought out fight scene as far as I'm concerned.
It is. Again, I just generally enjoyed it, all of it, and also it builds up tension throughout the whole thing because she's being beaten. She was the last defense essentially, while everyone is just trying to make things work.
Right. Now, at the other key part of this episode from the perspective of this discussion with Vi and Vander, is that Vander, after the explosion happens that Jinx causes and gets Milo and Clagger killed, which is like one of the most like, oh my god kind of moments, like from that point to the end of the episode is it's actually hard to watch.
Yeah,
like,
I did not expect
hard.
that.
It is hard. I didn't expect it at all, and like stop watching for a bit at the end of the episode because of how heart-wrenching it is. It is so... The show reaches into your chest and just grips your heart.
Yeah, they went there. It's not many series that actually dare to go there, or not in the fashion that they do, right? But
no, and it's really in that moment. It's in that last 10 minutes that sets this show so far apart from all the other shows out there that try to do things similar, because most shows won't do what's necessary to put the audience into that headspace of what you are experiencing is a tragic downfall. Yeah. And a lot of times they want to do that without, but they don't earn the emotion.
Yeah.
But this show earns every tear that it squeezes out of the audience. Everyone.
Yeah. It's not just edge baiting like so many other series do. This is generally just, it's a tragedy unfolding before your eyes.
It's a tragedy, and it all makes sense, and it's all earned. It's all done respectfully and with care. That few other shows will do. Now there's one more key aspect to this whole scene, and that's when Vander takes the shimmer, and he becomes like the big mutant Vander.
Yep.
And once again, he is on a bridge with a choice between conflict or protection.
I didn't actually recognize that.
He's presented with the exact same scenario he was at the beginning of the show. And what does he do? He chooses the protection. He chooses the caregiver role and not the fighter. Which cements him as like the ultimate caregiver, willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for his family.
Yeah, it cements him as a father, a true paternal.
Exactly. A true positive portrayal of a father. Again, something you never see coming out of Hollywood these days.
Yeah, because every father in this story, even the characters that are rightly just slimy and unlikable, even they, when of course the ones who are fathers, they are respected in that role.
Right. Yeah, they are, and that's the show's exploration of fatherhood. Like honestly, the exploration of fatherhood is the key driving force behind the whole show. It really is. And I think that now that we've like basically seen Vander's arc as a father, this is a good way to contrast that into Silco's arc as a father.
Yeah. And I want to prefix this with that Silco is, in Arcane, my favorite character.
He's easily the most interesting. Because and the thing is, it's like everybody throughout the show, you never really can tell if what he's thinking in terms of like how he's treating Jinx is actually genuine or not. Like, whose interest is does he mean to serve?
Yeah,
You
you're
never
kind of
truly
guessing.
know it.
You're kind of
You're
guessing
kind
all
of
the way to the
guessing.
end.
You're guessing all the way up, not until the fountain scene. It's the scene with Jace on the rampart before the fountain scene
Right.
that
Yes.
that reveals how Silco has been feeling the whole time and what's been motivating his behavior. And I'll get to that in a sec.
Let's
Um,
go.
so as I said before, Silco and Vander very much have a thing where they're validating their respective daughters and also in imprinting their values onto them. Now, if you remember, Silco and Vander are very much like they're brothers in the cause originally, right? But at a point, because Vander walks away, Silco confronts him, and then Vander basically tries to kill Silco in like
Yep.
this form of ultimate betrayal. Um,
And that is how he gains this little mark around his eye here.
right. Yeah, he explains later on, like, do you have any idea when he after he kidnaps Vander, he has Vander like on the bridge, and they're talking with each other. I think I actually have some notes that I've written down here about this conversation.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so after Silco takes Vander, they have this convo on this catwalk, and during this convo, Vander he basically pleads to Silco's inner humanity. Because at this point they have diverged in where their loyalties lie and what motivates them. Vander has chosen to put family over the cause. But in the betrayal moment of Vander trying to kill Silco, that severs any familial bond that Silco has. So without that anchoring of family, Silco basically has the ability to choose to put all of his being into the cause.
Yes.
Because he doesn't have that familial bond that Vander chose to have.
And also,
And
in a way,
and this is Vander's big tragedy, is that Vander is the one who steals that familial bond away from Silco when he
yeah.
betrays him.
And also, in a way, I believe that Silco is very much like Savika in that he, at least at that point, was more loyal to the cause, or rather causes, than people.
Correct, exactly. And that's the whole thing about finding humanity through family, which is one of the explorations that I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, is that it's family that anchors the humanity behind all of the characters, whether it be Vi or Vander or, in the very end, Silco.
Yes.
And what they really show is that Silco is what Vander would have become had he not chosen to protect the daughters on the bridge. If he had chosen the conflict rather than the daughters, he would have become Silco. The same thing can be said about Vi and Savika. If Vi didn't have that anchor of Vander, she would have become Savika. Because remember in the beginning, Vi is on Savika's side, remember? In the
Yeah.
bar, and then walks out on him. And then Vi's like, why aren't we fighting? What the hell? Like she's on Savika's side.
Yeah.
And that's when Vander, Vander's like, I've heard this kind of talk before, come with me. And then they go back to the bridge. And they have that conversation on the bridge between Vi and Vander. And then let me see if I can find it in my notes again. Because I wrote down that conversation. See.
I gotta say, I do like having you here because you come very, very well prepared.
This is again, I've wanted to do like media analysis content, and I was like, this is like a perfect jumping on point for that. So yeah. But when they're during this discussion, Vi reveals her selfless nature, and that her loyalties are exclusively to the people that she cares about and loves,
Yes.
and not to a cause. on the bridge, uh, she says, or what? Let me say. She says, "I am." She is lesser than Piltover, basically. Like she says, "I know that I grew up knowing that I am lesser than them, that I don't deserve what they have." And then she says something very, very key. She says, um, "I want Powder to have more than that, and I'm willing to fight for it." And the key is just she doesn't say I want to have. She doesn't say I want us to have. She says Powder specifically, leaving herself out of it entirely. Because her instinct is completely selflessness.
Yeah.
Which makes her a quintessential hero. It really does. It cements her as a heroic archetype. She's on Savika's side for different reasons. Where Savika wants to see a political goal seen through, Vi wants her family to have better lives. She's pursuing the revolution for her family, whereas Savika is pursuing the revolution just for the sake of a cause.
Yes.
And ultimately, Vi represents the humanity within the conflict. She doesn't care about the ultimate political goal or cause that Savika is loyalty. All she cares about is her family. And she is fully selfless in doing that. And that's what makes her such a great character that you want to root for. Because, man, she goes out of her way to get her ass kicked on the behalf of the people that she loves.
Several
and if that's not
times.
inspiring, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
You know? And you see this again, like, you know, after the first act, the second and third act is very much Vi basically finding purpose again because she gets thrown in prison during the time skip. There's a 7-year time skip between the first act and the second act.
Yeah.
And Vi spends this whole time in prison, so she doesn't basically change as the rest of the world changes. And the only thing, basically, when she's in prison, she doesn't really care. And she reveals at the very last scene of the show, she says, you know, I spent days, months, years eating that gruel and sleeping on that freezing floor. And the only thing that kept me going, the only thing that gave me any kind of hope was the thought of getting back to you, talking to Powder, essentially. So the only thing that drives her is her family. And when she's in prison, because remember, Caitlin, gets her out in episode 4. She's just kind of like flippant towards Caitlin, doesn't care about anything until Caitlin shows her the drawing. And then she immediately recognizes that as one of Powder's drawings.
Yep.
And suddenly, I have to get out. I have to get back to my sister. And then when she's out, there's this interesting relationship that develops between Vi and Caitlin. Because Vi is basically she's kind of untethered from her role as a protector because she doesn't really have anybody to really protect. So she kind of goes on a chaos arc a little bit. Like, yeah, she has a singular purpose to get back to her sister, but she's kind of chaotic in the way she does it.
Yeah. A bit unbound, unfocused. Needs to, again, she's focused on finding her sister, but she kind of bumbles along the way.
Yeah, and it's actually, this is why her pairing up with Caitlin is kind of perfect, because Caitlin is just like this very straight and narrow, I know my morals, and I practice restraint when necessary. You know, she's very, like I said, on the straight and narrow, you know, but she kind of reveals herself to be like the guiding heart that Vi needs to meet her goals, which is why they pair up so well together. And as they journey into the underworld during Act 2, because the whole thing between Vi and Caitlin during Act 2 is them just going down, literally to the very, very bottom of the Undercity. And turns out that in that journey, there are several times where Caitlin saves her, and she realizes, you know, oh, this girl actually cares about me to the point where, you know, she'll put her neck on the line to save me. Maybe she's someone who's worth protecting. Yeah. And so she starts having this more familial kind of relationship with her, which is why she gets this little cute little cupcake and Caitlyn's like, stop calling me that. And he goes, but you're so sweet, like a cupcake. These very endearing little moments like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Out of all
but
romances, especially in modern day, and it's well, it's not really surprising that Vi is a woman who prefers women,
right.
but she's not that modern kind of lesbian. She is actually a well written one, if you can
Well,
believe
that's the
that.
thing is that she develops a relationship with Caitlyn only after learning that Caitlyn is somebody worth caring about.
Yep.
Because Caitlyn goes out of her way. Caitlyn's the one who takes a risk bothering to care about Vi. Because remember, Vi is just her guy to get to Jinx and the stone.
Yep.
That's all. Vi starts out to Caitlyn as just like a tool.
Yep.
A tool to get her end. And she has this natural caringness about her, and she ends up like seeing like, she gets exposed to the underworld or the undercity for the very first time. And she kind of realizes like, oh, these are people too, and things aren't so great about down here. Heimerdinger experiences the same thing at the end of the show too.
Yeah.
But as Vi it develops this relationship with Caitlyn, they kind of realize that like they can see like a little bit of each other in themselves, which is it's really interesting. They actually like show this physically because when they're lying on the bed together, when they get to Caitlyn's house, they position themselves in like a yin yang position.
Yep.
You notice? Yeah. So it's like directly showing, it's subtly kind of hinting at you that like Vi is like this very chaotic kind of directionless person because she's a protector with no one to protect,
Yep.
But she has that little drop of that moral guidance and that centered heart that Caitlyn inside her, and it's vice versa for Caitlyn.
Yep.
Which is a really nice way to portray the two as the relationship builds. And the thing is, they don't like have sex or anything. At one point they kind of like clasp each other's hands on the bed and that kind of stuff. But it's not like there's nothing gratuitous ever, and it's very much a relationship built out of actual caring and love and not lust, which is what's typically done. Which I can very much appreciate.
Had this been
And
a
I
Hollywood
really,
classic, quote unquote, they would have just been
yeah,
banging
exactly.
on the sheets.
And I personally, I love the relationship between Vi and Caitlyn. It must flesh out in season 2. We'll see, because in the League of Legends lore, it's very much the Vi and Caitlyn show. Like they are together as enforcers for Piltover.
Yes.
Vi's tagline in the game is literally the Piltover enforcer, and Caitlyn is the sheriff of Piltover. Like,
yes.
like that's how it. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes there. But how we doing on the time, by the way?
We still have a fair amount of time.
Okay, that's good because I think I'm a little bit more than halfway through.
Yeah.
Everything.
Excellent. I'd say we have 30 minutes 20 minutes at most.
20 minutes? Okay, I can do 20 minutes.
Heck yeah.
I guess for these last 20 minutes, well, let me cap off the juxtaposition between Savika and Vi. So I've gone through how Vi is selfless. She's motivated by selflessness to the point where at the bridge scene with Echo is the bridge scene where she walks away from her sister, which is the second time she's done that. And this is Vi's tragedy. This is the source of Vi's trauma that I guarantee you we're going to see eat at her in season 2.
Yeah.
Is that the 2 points in her life where her role as a protector mattered the most are the 2 points where she walked away. And she even says it. She tells it to Caitlyn on the bed that when the real monster appeared, I ran.
Well,
and
that's the thing. I think that is a little bit of guilt speaking because the first time she was forced actually to she was dragged away.
That's true, but she still blames herself
Yes.
because if she didn't hit her and hit Powder in that moment and walk away, she would have been there for her. So she still blames herself. And why don't get me started on Marcus. Marcus is like the one character in the show that bugs the hell out of me. I'm not gonna
Marcus is
talk
that
about him though.
the police dude, right?
Yeah, he's a police sheriff that
Ugh.
none of his motivations are like explained as to like what drives him to do what he does. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get into him though. But it's also why by the end, really the end of Vi's arc is the fight, the big wail, the big scream of just despair that she gives off after she beats Savika for this finally, because she's left her sister. She's also left behind Caitlyn because she's like the council has rejected them, and she's like, you're oil and I'm water. We're never gonna be able to make this work. I'm leaving now because I have a history of abandoning people when they need me most, and I don't want to see that happen to you, so I am leaving. And she leaves Caitlyn behind.
A
Right?
self-fulfilling prophecy.
And so, with nothing left to protect, she basically just is fueled by rage and revenge. And so she just goes directly to Savika, beats Savika, and now that she's seen that, she's got nothing left at that point. And so she falls to her knees and she gives off that big just yell of just rage and despair and hopelessness, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like Vi's tragedy, essentially. That's the tragic element of her arc. That I guarantee you is going to be played out more in the second season. We're going to see the culmination of that purposelessness and guilt and failure, because they pretty much all but said so in interviews I've seen about the second season.
Yeah.
Now getting to Savika has done the exact opposite. Savika, she betrays Vander because she won't fight back against Piltover because, again, she's loyal to the cause. And she takes the cause and she personifies it. Like, who is the person who is best suited to facilitate the goal of the cause? That's who she's loyal to.
Yeah.
Right? She embodies the cause into the person who is most strongest to cross the finish line for the cause.
Yeah.
So she sees the weakness. Again, she doesn't see fear. She sees weakness in Vander. And so she abandons Vander, when really it's Vander who abandons her. And then she goes to Silco.
Yeah.
She saves Silco instinctually when when Powder's monkey bomb goes off. And that's how she loses her arm, right?
Yep.
She instinctually jumps in front of him because to her, she's not saving Silco, she's saving the cause.
Yep.
By doing that.
She has personified in that. She has essentially personified Silco she's personified him as the only way to reach Son, or the goal at least.
He's the greatest chance of seeing the independent city of Son realized.
Yes.
Basically. And then in the rest of the season, her focus is she basically sees Jinx and her relationship with Silco as weakening Silco towards the cause.
Yeah.
The same way, basically, she sees Vander and Vi's relationship manifesting itself inside of Silco, and she's like, if Jinx continues to be his daughter, he's eventually going to abandon the cause too.
Yes.
And which we'll get to this. She's 100% correct in that feeling. And so there's two moments where she tells she tells Jinx about Vi and how because she sees Jinx as a burden to the cause. She also tells Silco to let Jinx come to him so that he focus on the cause, not your little family conflict. That's just like the rare the one emotional moment that Savika has in the show, because she frames this as she says that she never saw eye to eye with her old man, but she'll come back eventually. And it's like the one moment where you see some humanity in Savika is when she talks about her dad.
Yeah, when she
isn't that interesting?
When she isn't a diehard ideologue.
Yeah, the one person that she has a little bit of an emotion for is her father. Isn't that interesting? I really want to know who her dad is.
I think now
I
that
actually,
this is what I think. When now that she doesn't have Silco and or Vander, she's alone and most likely one of the few people who have the highest rank in the organization she's in. I think we're gonna see a little bit more of her former life, what made her her.
this is what I think is going to happen, or this is what I hope happens. Is I actually think Savika might have a redemption arc in season 2.
Yeah.
Because it'll be interesting seeing how the power vacuum formed by Silco's death gets filled in season 2.
Yep.
Because the thing is that the two biggest candidates are Savika and Jinx, but neither of them are leaders.
It's not just that, it's also the chick who the Asian guy really isn't anymore.
Oh, the Chem Baron.
Yep.
I don't think the Chem Barons are gonna. I think that they're gonna play. They're gonna try, but they're gonna have too much internal strife. And I actually think that Savika is gonna reluctantly step up and take the role.
I think so
And
too.
what I speculate, and I hope what happens to Savika in season 2 is that I hope that she reluctantly becomes the de facto leader of the revolution, and then her dad somehow comes back into the picture. I have no idea who her dad is. She's a completely original character, so there's a lot of good candidates that could be her dad.
Yes.
And then suddenly, with the introduction of her dad, the one person that she hints that she actually kind of cares about, she finds herself split in loyalty between the cause and her dad, which puts her into the exact same shoes of the very peoples that she historically betrayed and discarded.
Yeah. I kind of hope
that
that
was-
she finds someone she can connect to. So essentially,
Yeah,
it goes in threes. She's essentially abandoned Vander, and she almost abandoned Silco for the same reasons. I kind of want the irony where she too finds someone.
exactly. And that's what I want. I want her to become the leader, and then her dad come back in, and now she's split. She finds herself in the exact same dilemma that both Vander and Silco were in.
Yes.
That she betrayed both of them, right? Well, I guess she didn't really betray Silco, but she saw that was happening to Silco,
Yes.
basically,
But
and
she
didn't want it to happen.
she
And now-
almost
and then-
betrayed him too.
She almost did. She was almost there, but I think that basically will bring having her dad back in the picture will allow her to come to an understanding of why Vander and Silco did what they did, and that she was wrong for betraying them, and that it could potentially lead to her abandoning the cause herself.
I hope
as
they
a result of
actually,
that
instead
epiphany.
of abandon the cause, they evolve it.
Somehow, yeah, something, but there needs to be a paradigm shift for her and what she cares about.
Yes.
Because that shift is what will rehumanize her. And I actually want to see Savika become humanized again.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. And maybe it takes sacrificing, maybe her dad sacrifices himself for her, or hell, maybe she, after coming to that epiphany, sacrifices herself
Yeah.
for her dad or something like that, in some kind of, because she realizes that sacrificing yourself for a loved one is a noble action, whereas doing so for a cause is just selfish, ideological martyrdom.
I kind of hope that she adopts a kid of some form instead, or another thing. To me, it's two things: either have her go through this arc herself, either becoming yet another mirror for Vander and Silco, or
Mm-hmm.
she gets the same choice, but she chooses the ideology instead. I don't think it will happen, but it would be great to see her develop like an antagonist, and she follows the already set path for her, how she always chooses the her ideals before her anything else. Because imagine if she still doesn't have any, she becomes a really good counter to Vi and Jinx, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of potential to her to have like a humanizing arc in season 2,
Oh
and I would
yeah, I'm
love to
not
see it
saying that
happen.
she should have a humanizing arc. She can still be humanized, but where she gets the choices to choose family and loved ones over the ideals,
Hmm.
she still clings to the ideals instead, and essentially that breaks her. Or
Yeah, and she doesn't have that choice. She in season 1, she never has that choice. Like
exactly.
she has the cause that she's loyalty, and there's nothing introduced into her life that could potentially um, take precedent over the cause, which is why she's so steadfast.
Yep.
So it would be interesting. I want to see her have that choice in season 2.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're running out of time, so I want to use the remaining time to talk about Silco's arc.
Go ahead.
Um, so, like I said, in episode 3, they have this. He has this talk with Vander on the catwalk, and he makes this appeal to Silco's inner humanity, where Vander says, "Look at what you've done, Benzo," which is the big guy that got killed by the mutant thing. Um, these kids fighting topside, you'd sacrifice everything that we are. That's not the way. Can you not see that? Kill me if you have to, but please spare the lanes. And then Silco replies, "You die for the cause, but you won't fight for one." And we see this dichotomy because Silco isn't anchored by family, so he can dedicate everything to the cause. Until Jinx comes into the picture, obviously, when Powder literally throws herself at him, and across like the whole second and third acts, you can see that Jinx is becoming more and more of a problem for him, but
Yep.
he's also continuing to choose her more and more over the cause.
Yeah.
Which is why when we get that scene with the Chem Barons and Savika kills the Asian Chem Baron dude,
Yeah.
after that sword slash, you look at it. It shows Silco in the chair, and his head is ducked. His hand is like covering his brow, and he's like,
Oh yeah. He
He's-
was scared.
he did not know, because he completely understands Savika's motivation,
Yep.
and because of that, he did not know what Savika was going to do in that moment.
Nope.
Because he knew that Jinx was weakening his resolve to the cause.
Yeah.
And that was like a wake up call to him, that his loyalties were being torn between two things that he loved.
Yep.
The city of Zon and Jinx. And this culminates beautifully on the ramparts when he talks to Jace, and Jace puts a peace treaty into his hands and said, "You give me Jinx, and you get your city of Zon." And now Silco is forced to choose between the two things that he loves most. And what's the very next scene? There's a little scene with Echo after that, but then right after the Echo scene is the one of my favorite scenes in the whole show, which is the Silco at the Vander statue scene.
Yes.
And let me go back to the ramparts, because it's not the statue scene where he decides to choose Jinx over the cause. It's the ramparts, because once Jace gives him that ultimatum, he instinctually resists the decision. He says to Jace immediately that Jinx was working for him and is not to blame. He's been basically just instinctually said, "I will sacrifice myself."
He was
save
willing
Jinx.
to take the fall for her in that
He
moment.
was willing to take the fall for Jinx, and he did it instinctually when he was provided that ultimatum. Because you could tell when that thing he does that little head shake, he's flustered by that decision.
Yep.
And he immediately has this protective reaction for Jinx. He's been attached to Jinx to the point where he is willing to sacrifice himself, and therefore the whole project of the Independent Zon, to spare Jinx, which is exactly what Vander did to Vi when he volunteered himself to be arrested instead of Vi. He did the same thing. He made that sacrifice, despite it meaning a breakdown of that fragile peace accord that they had between Piltover and Zon. in the beginning of the show, Vander's willing to sacrifice himself and the integrity of the Undercity for his family. And in the end of the show, Silco is prepared to do the exact same thing
Oh,
for Jeeks. In that moment, he has become Vander. And what happens in the next scene at the fountain? He pours one out to Vander and he says, 1,000 times I imagined this moment, but never like this. All we ever wanted, the boy didn't even haggle. And what do I lose but problems? And then he says, oh, it all makes sense now, brother. Is there anything so undoing as a daughter?
yeah.
And that's him telling Vander, you were right all along.
Yep. They have this moment after each other.
He becomes Vander in that moment. And if it weren't for Jinx taking him and doing the tea party scene, which we'll talk about once we get to Jinx in another talk, he completes his arc at that point.
Yep.
He completes his arc as a father at that point. And then he has this, and because it's the completion of his arc, in a tragedy, once you complete your arc, you die.
Yeah.
And so he has this really bittersweet death at the end of the show. And he professes, I would have never given them to you.
Yeah. But it's
You're
not just
perfect.
that. It is essentially Jinx has put herself, Vi, and Silco in this tea party, where essentially she has placed them on opposite sides of a table to convince her who to go for.
Mm-hmm.
Jinx doesn't know what
Yes.
she wants to do. She doesn't know what she wants. She loves them both, but she can't decide. So she uses the tea party to help her decide.
Right.
And it's essentially Vi is starting to win. Silco sees this. And now I'm just reading this how I saw it myself. Okay.
No, you're good. You're good. Go
Yeah.
for it.
So
I love it.
Silco now sees how Vi is starting to win over Jinx, whom he just realized how much he cared for her, right? And
Mhm.
he's starting to have one of these few moments, because it's shown that Silco always keeps his cool, or at least tries to. There's only there's
presentation is important to him.
there's only 2 times in the series where he kind of loses his cool, and only once previously where he actually loses his cool. He just goes ballistic and starts kicking, screaming, and beating on something after he feels like he lost control of the situation. And
Right.
it
When the
kind of
tower collapses on him. Yeah.
Yep. And the other one is when Saviko really just almost kills him, right? However, here
You can't keep his composure there.
exactly when Silco can keep his composure through almost anything, but when he snaps, and he has that near animalistic moment again where he struggles to get out of the bonds. He gets his arm out, he pulls out, he reaches a gun, pulls it out, and is about to shoot Vi.
Right.
Jinx's instincts, similarly, her sisterly or familial instincts kicks in, and she shoots Silco to protect Vi.
Mhm.
I don't think it wasn't predetermined. It was just a reaction.
It was an instinctual reaction to protect her family.
Yes.
Um,
And now Silco is dying, and at that moment, when he is dying, is when he actually wins her over. That is
Mhm.
when Jinx chooses to be. That is when Powder chooses to become Jinx, because Jinx is the daughter of Silco, essentially the family member of his. Powder is Vi's sister, but that is just the moment where Jinx becomes Jinx and Powder essentially ceases to be.
Exactly, and it makes a lot of sense narratively too, because all the way up to this point, Silco has been trying to convince Jinx that he's her, he is her father and he cares about her more than anything.
Yes.
But she never believes it, but that's because Victor doesn't really believe it either.
Nope.
Until that scene on the ramparts when he realizes where his loyalties actually are, and he realizes, oh my god, I do love Jinx more than the cause.
Yep.
And that's when he like drinks a bunch of alcohol and pours one out to Vander, saying, I get it. I finally understand.
Yeah. Though another
You were
point
right the
where
whole
he,
time.
another
And
point where he
but
kind of realizes how much he cares for her too, is the scene where of Jinx's surgery.
well, before the surgery, there's also an interesting parallel because there's the whole conflict on the bridge,
Mhm.
and on that bridge, uh, Silco goes to the bridge. He picks up a practically dead Jinx, and he has a choice on the bridge to fight or to retreat with the one she loves, just like Vander did twice. Like you see this parallel,
Yeah.
and suddenly he has this protector moment, and then but it's really like that time on the ramparts where he realizes that I not only do I love Jinx, like genuinely love her, but I'm willing to sacrifice the cause for her.
Yeah. But I don't think he really
And
sees it just yet. He truly realizes it during the negotiation or the
the rampart.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where he truly realizes how much he actually loves Jinx, to the point where I'm willing to not see the cause through if it means saving my daughter.
Yes.
And then because he comes to that realization, when he speaks to her at the end as he's dying, is he's speaking for the first time from a place of pure genuineness
Yes.
towards her, and she picks that up, and it's the first time where she actually is convinced that he did actually love her.
Yeah.
And she was perfect to him, and that's why she chooses to be Jinx.
Yeah, and here's another thing. If Vi wants Powder back, she doesn't want Jinx. She doesn't want the one she is or is becoming. But Silco loves Jinx no matter what.
Yep. Exactly.
And that is the thing I believe that essentially makes Jinx choose to become Silco's daughter and not Vi's sister.
And again, it's that confrontation with the real monster, that moment of key where being a protector matters the most. Vi fails again,
Yes.
and that's Vi's tragedy, and that's what she's going to have to reconcile with in season 2.
Yeah.
And
Again,
I can speculate in season 2.
Yeah, as you said on the poster, she is traumatized. She is lost. She is scared, and
Mhm.
I think that what was the name of her girlfriend again?
Caitlyn.
Caitlyn. I think Caitlyn is essentially gonna fill the void that was left, or essentially gonna be Vi's redemption to be able to protect someone
Caitlyn
again.
she's going to play the same role she played to play Vi in season 1, where she is the guiding heart.
Yep.
And that's going to be what saves Vi. I also think that because in lore, Vander becomes Warwick, who is like he's called the Hound of the Lanes.
Yeah, he did.
He's literally a
called that, right?
werewolf. He's literally a werewolf, and we know for a fact that that's going to be a thing in season 2. And I feel like he's basically got to wrestle not with the internal monster, but now a literal external monster that he's become. And I think that the prospect of saving the conflict, of saving his two daughters from killing each other, is going to be the things that basically allow. It's going to be the driving familial force that enables him to overcome his new monstrous nature and regain his humanity. And then the regaining of that humanity and regaining that father figure is what's going to in turn save Vi and Jinx as well.
Maybe.
And like the happy ending is that the three of them are able to actually reconcile as a family again, even if they go their separate ways, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's almost fairy tale ending. I
But
think
sometimes you just want the happy ending. I'm gonna be honest.
Man, I feel like, for God's sakes, the characters at this point have earned a happy ending.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
So I'm kind of worried about one thing, which really worries me about that, and that is, you do know how the series and the first season ends, right?
Yeah, with the council, yeah.
Yeah, that is not gonna be easy because the council already wanted their pound of flesh. Now they're gonna want more.
Oh, it's all out war in season 2.
Oh yeah.
And that's the thing. Like I characterize the 3 acts of season 1 to be the split, the reunion, and the fall.
Yes.
And you can extrapolate that further to the cities themselves. And season 1 is going to be the split, and I have a feeling that season 2 is going to be the reunion. That's what narratively, that's what makes sense. But honestly, there's so many ways that they could go. They've already said that like they're basically like the characters are going to be the opposite of how they ended in season 1, which can be different ways. They could end up, because remember, how do they start off season 1? They start off season 1, 2 sisters embraced by a father figure, walking away from conflict, and they end up in absolute conflict, all out war, and they couldn't be more estranged from each other at that point.
Yeah.
So what does the opposite mean? Does that mean that they reunite? What does that mean? Either way, I'm really looking forward to season 2. I trust the writers to pull off an amazing story because they did such a magnificent job with season 1. I think the discussion's pretty much over for this one. We didn't even mention Jinx's story, her arcs, her themes, or Victor, or Jace, or Mel. But I think we're going to do that in another one.
Yeah,
we could do another one with them. But I hope that alone is enough to convince some of your audience to give the show a shot.
Yeah,
because I adore this show so much.
Yeah, I really want to recommend the show too. It's not just that it is well made, but it's also one of the most amazingly animated shows. It has a very unique
just from a
style.
Technical point of view.
Yes,
it's worth watching. Like the attention to detail, like they go down to animating the saccade of people's eyes. You know what saccade is?
No.
So like if you watch, like look at a person's pupils while they're reading a book,
yeah,
and you'll notice that their pupils are making all these tiny little micro darting motions.
Yep.
Because that's how your eyes actually work. They actually animate that in the show. Like that's how insanely detailed the animation of the show is.
Alive in this thing, and that is not just them saying, "Oh, it's impressive anime." No, dude, this a single scene of animation here is enough to kind of rival the Unicron transformation from Transformers 1986.
Oh god, yeah, it's like that's the thing. Like the animation, it's like CG with a blend of 2D.
Yes.
But like the way that the characters move, like you can feel the weight, you can feel the gravity and the physics of the world. You can feel the impact. The atmospheric is like you can smell the city of Zon.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like just the animation style is so good. The animation was done by a French studio actually called Fortiche.
Hey, say what you want about the French, but when it comes to art, they know what they're doing.
When it comes to art and animation,
yep,
the French know what the hell they're doing.
I mean, there's a reason I keep calling the French artistically the Japanese of Europe, because their bande dessinées are amazing.
Yeah, I just I'm not going to get political.
No.
When it comes to France, but
if you want politics, join us on Sultans of Chaudelet every Saturday.
Indeed.
Shameless plug. You're welcome, Pesek.
Well, I guess that's actually probably a good segue, because I think we're pretty much over. I talked about fatherhood, finding humanity through family, and the how Savika is like a perfect foil. Because that's the thing. There's not really antagonists, like villains and heroes per se. It's just all the characters have very well established motivations that keep them true to their character.
Yeah.
And if they get in each other's way in any way, they act more like foils to each other and not like direct antagonists or villains.
It is protagonists and antagonists, not heroes and villains. Or rather, a lot of different types of heroes. Savika, for her cause, she's the hero of the cause of Zon. The same goes for Silco, but he also becomes a more paternal hero. Vander is exactly the same as Silco, but on a how he is as a character, much more blunt, while Silco is far more, as you can see in their design too. One is sharp, the other's blunt. Silco is more scheming, conniving, but again, he is in no way less protective of his family.
Yeah, it's very interesting how Vander is like this big burly dude,
Yeah.
but he has rounded edges, and he very much practices restraint and stoicism. Whereas Silco is small and lithe and Machiavellian, but he's drawn sharply, and um, he very much is literally all about releasing the monster.
Oh yeah.
He's the
He
opposite of restraint.
Yeah,
You know,
Vander releases the animal whenever he needs to protect someone. Silco, he holds it back until he can't control it anymore, which is fittingly what kills him.
well, Silco looks for any opportunity to not be restrained,
Yeah,
whereas Vander goes out of his way to find every opportunity to restrain himself.
yeah. Or
Um,
I think it's rather opposite because Vander he releases it more often. That's how he controls this. He knows when to push and pull. Silco, in the end, he seems more he bottles it up, right? Uses his passions to essentially get out his animal, you could say. But
he's more careful with it,
exactly because I.
but he also seems to embrace it more at the same time.
Yes,
Which is
but,
strange. Where like Vander uses it more, but he doesn't feel good about it.
Nope.
You know.
Yeah. But
Which is an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah, Silco's release of his aggression never really gives him the satisfaction of it, which is why he boils over and loses it. And again,
Right.
watch this goddamn show. It is just good. Whether you like animation or a
beautiful.
good story. Or just
Or
like
action. Jeez, the action. There's some that remember that punch that Vi delivers with the hex core gauntlet to the chem.
Yeah, that fucking junkie.
Oh my god, dude, that frame of a punch is one of the most.
Yeah, that
Like,
shit channeled
oh my
Dragon
god,
Ball.
the impact is so beautiful. It is so good. Like
Yeah.
again, it speaks to the animation how like you feel the impact and the momentum behind punches and all this kind of stuff. You really like good job of
Oh yeah.
making the audience feel like this is real.
Again, they just channeled Dragon Ball in that one.
100%, and they earned it. They earned
yeah.
it. It's such a badass movement because there's a lot of every character has moments of vulnerability, you know, especially the male characters, but they also all have moments of grandiose badassery.
Yeah.
You know, like they all get their down moments and their up moments, and I really appreciate that. And boy, is that an up movement when Vi just lands that punch like from the air. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. No, I think we need to stop there because we're starting to run out of time, and we've hit the nerd out point, and that might be dangerous.
Fair enough.
But yeah, again, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to next time when we talk about Jinx and the other two central characters of this story.
Correct.
And maybe Heimerdinger too. He's worth a mention.
Yeah, I do have some stuff about Heimerdinger and his relationship with Singed, believe it or not.
Exactly. Well, with this though, I would like to thank Besic for the edits, Robert Renato for supplying the music. I would also very much like to thank you, Wandering Helmsman, for tagging along with this. It's been really funny. Also, I would very much like you to shill yourself. Where can they find you? What do you do? Your channel?
Yeah, so I'm a VTuber. I know, cringe, male VTuber. I also have, well, I do have a furry model. I'll just say it because you're gonna find out eventually.
Don't worry, Chad. He's one of the good ones. He's one of the good ones.
But I do gaming streams 3 times a week over on my channel, which is youtube.com/@wanderinghelmsman. I'm also on Twitter at Wander Helmsman without the ing. And like I said, I do 3 gaming streams a week, and I also do a Saturday news and reaction stream. which is a lot of fun. That I actually plan to start having guests. My most recent one featured Rosa Codal. If you're familiar with her, I know you are, Trim.
Yep.
But I plan to actually have more guests, co-hosts, going into the future for that as well. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that's me.
Awesome. The link to his channel will be in the description down below, as well as his social media. Now, as we got to that part of the show, if you like what you saw here, artistically from me, and you would like some merch, there's a link in the description down below. Feel free to get yourself a t-shirt or anything. Though, if you'd rather want something more personal, I am open for doing commissions at either my Ko-Fi, or you could reach out on my Twitter, DM me there, or if you have me on Discord, just DM me there on Discord. And we can just settle for prices. Though do note, Helmsman, furries cost extra.
Don't worry, we can afford it.
Ah, yes, suspiciously rich furries, the lifeblood of commission artists. Well, and with that, I again would like to thank everybody for watching. Again, Helmsman, thank you for joining, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Goodbye.
See you later, everybody.